Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic, host of Bachelor Nation News. We've got an update. Nick Viall slams back on Blake Horstmann in the interview that Nick is doing with Blake Moynes. Now, that's a lot of Blakes for the story here, but we're going to get into it. Nick says that Blake Horstmann left a trail of collateral damage and accuses Blake of spreading misinformation. We're going to correct any sort of falsities that we see. Follow me on Instagram at dneals and also patreon.com/Dave Neal. I'll be honest, I've got the kid gloves on right now. When I go on Patreon, I'm going to let the kid gloves off, and I'm going to give you my full, unfiltered thoughts on this. But right now, for the sake of not wanting to be accused of being biased, I'm going to be as sort of centrist as possible. I know that's hard to do, but I'm going to try my best to check this out. So we're going to go look at this video right here. But if anyone's wondering my thoughts on this whole story, we followed it from when Katie exposed that she blocked Nick to Nick's response to then what Nick said by exposing text from Katie with when Nick was doing his podcast with Natalie, his girlfriend, or maybe they're engaged. I don't know. Do they get engaged in Paris? We'll find out. And then from there, Blake Horstmann threw his hand in the ring saying Nick's a hypocrite. And a lot of people, I would say the majority of people that I came across both here and all the other platforms, say about 90+%, sided with Katie on this one. That's just where it's at. So anyway, I've been covering it, and here's a quick recap of how it goes.
Different person, but from what I remember, she was obviously beautiful and a lot of fun to be around. She's the life of the party.
Whoa. A lot of fun.
Yeah, she's
all
like,
right, so there it is. So a lot of fun. So that's what we have there. Let's see what Nick had to say.
Woo! All right. So there was a little bit of feedback after our episode last week where we discussed the Katie of it all. And
thank you for your feedback.
And Blake Horstmann took to his Instagram story about Nick, and he said, quote, "This has to be a joke, right? This man has talked shit about me for 4 years because he can't get over, even though he tells everyone to get over everything, my text release from BIP for an actual big deal. Then he releases text for something as stupid and benign as this."
Big deal?
For an actual, so Nick says, what does he mean by an actual big deal? The big deal being the reason Blake released these text messages is because it was a sort of pile-on where Blake was being sort of soft Me Too'd. Well, you don't use that term with any sort of disrespect. At the time, there were articles like this, how the Bachelor franchise is flipping the script and embracing feminist rage in 2019. And Blake essentially was accused of leading multiple women on through sexual intercourse. And his idea was to call out Kaylin by saying she was the one who was using me for sex. And he privately messaged Kaylin to say, set the record straight here, because I'm getting accused of things that, while wouldn't put me in jail, would definitely affect my livelihood moving forward because they're not true. And it's one thing for the TV show to frame and edit in a certain way. It's another to characterize somebody as slanderous as being somebody who's, committing sort of those types of things he was alleged to have been committing, which is that he was a huge player and leading people on, and then they brought into people's previous traumas that they had to deal with SA and things like that. It's tricky, but Blake asked Kaylin to come forward when she didn't correct the narrative. He released the text messages, some of which are right here. The first one, Blake's in blue. He said, we can cuddle, but no sex. And she said, yes, sex, only sex. He said, I have willpower. She said, no cuddling. He said, willpower. She said, yo, we both know that's not true. So she came over to his place. There's another text message which showed that she came over when he was saying, please don't come over. And then she goes over. And then afterwards, he knew that she was trying to become the Bachelorette. He knew that Kaylin was vying to be the Bachelorette, and yet on the show kind of made it out to seem like she was so into Blake. So she kind of jockeyed to play the victim there, at least through the edit. And then when it was the kind of chance to sort of correct the narrative. She didn't do it, so he released these text messages, and people had different thoughts on them. I think it's hard to say he did the right thing, but in his mind, that made the most sense. This was from his friend Chris Wendt, I think is his name, Kevin Wendt? Kevin, sorry. I feel like even now he's a little happy. I feel like it did a little bit of relief to him because he felt like he was being attacked for not everything that was fully true. I don't think anyone would have believed him if he had just come out and did an interview or did a podcast or said something on Instagram. I think that the only way to sort of clear his name was to release those texts. I don't know if I would have done it, but I understand where he came from. This might sound redundant to the convo, but when Nick is saying, I don't understand what the big deal is, that's the big deal. That's the big deal.
Biggest hypocrite in the world. So he's saying,
I think he meant it was incredibly
Clayton
important that people know he was like the
great-
WikiLeaks
yeah.
of Bachelor Nation.
So the producer on the left is employing the use of sarcasm here. Let's listen to that again.
text for something as stupid and benign as this.
Big deal.
Biggest hypocrite in the world. So he's saying,
I think he meant it was
with
incredibly
Clayton
important that people know he
was
was like the
great-
WikiLeaks
yeah.
of Bachelor Nation.
So he wasn't the WikiLeaks of Bachelor Nation. He was defending his character. And when you take away everything else about a person, that's all you have left.
you need to apparently let things go.
I'm not surprised that that was his response. I anticipated he might respond. I'm sure some people might agree with him.
It sounds like there was a cut there. I don't know if they cut these recordings, but it just feels like something was taken out there.
I definitely see a difference between the two. Yeah, I see a difference between me responding to Katie's random claim that she had me blocked from her phone, suggesting that there was some sort of like texting relationship that didn't exist.
So Katie's mentioning she blocked Nick from her phone wasn't a random claim. It was a fact that she did. Now we're going to go back slightly more because then Nick sort of fills in the blanks here with a little bit of misinformation.
There was some sort of like texting relationship that didn't exist. And then providing context around that by sharing the very last text message that she ever sent me compared to.
So Nick shared the text message that Katie sent him to say, look, there's nothing nefarious going on. As I've mentioned on my Patreon, and I'm not going to mention here, Katie, because we'll get to this, this story it'll continue, so we'll discuss it later. Katie's reasoning for blocking Nick wasn't the text message. It was what he may have done with that text message. Does that make sense? So he's implying that, well, let's just listen. This is very important that we get it right. Let's listen to what he's sort of saying she said right here, and then we'll play what she actually said.
Random claim that she had me blocked from her phone, suggesting that there was some sort of like texting relationship that.
Okay, so he's saying suggesting. Let's see if Katie suggests anything here. Because that's key. Because if we start sort of going towards our own projections of what actually happened, then we're just veering off the road of truth.
Does Nick Viall not like you? Nick Viall is blocked from my phone. There's some tea for you. I don't know. Nick is just... I don't know what to say about him, to be honest. Nick is Nick. I honestly kind of forget that he exists because he's literally like, I just don't care about his shit. But I get DMs sometimes that are like, oh my God, Nick won't stop talking shit about you. And I messaged him one time. I was like, hey, just letting you know, like, people are finding the things you're saying kind of odd. And then in short, he basically reverse Uno'd it and was like, how great that you have fans that really care about you and you get it and don't take it personally. And I was like, I mean, okay, whatever. You do you, Nick.
See you at the top.
I'll see you at the top.
All right, so that's it. So we've made 4 hours of content based on what? 47 seconds here. I don't know. Here's where I start to disagree with Nick. I don't see that Katie suggested anything about why she blocked him. Let's continue.
Didn't exist. And then providing context around that by sharing the very last text message that she ever sent me.
It's almost like when if you're in like in the court or like if someone's like, hey, you cheated on me on Thursday. And you go, listen, I was bowling on Thursday. And it's like, that doesn't mean you didn't cheat. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where by him providing the text message, he thinks he kind of negated what she's saying, and it didn't at all. And I think most people that saw that text message were like expecting some sort of mischievous sort of encounter or some proof that Katie was in the wrong, but no one got that from the text message.
Compared to Blake, who decided to post an entire screenshotted conversation about a sexual encounter he had with someone because he didn't like his fuckboy edit.
So it wasn't necessarily that he didn't like the edit. It's what Bachelor Nation did with the edit, right? So yeah, he didn't like the edit, but at the same time, the producers were flying very close to the sun with this edit. They were bringing in people's abuse that they had received in the past. They were almost making it look like Blake was, and again, this is in the height of the Me Too movement. This is a big deal. It's a big deal that shows don't inflame situations that should be broken down as real as possible. It's one thing to have an edit where you leave something out and the show creates some sort of false drama. It's another to do it at the expense of someone's credibility, when the only sex that Blake had was purely consensual, and you could argue that it was Kaylin coming on to him. Okay? So it's not just that it was an F-boy edit. It's the ramifications of that edit and what that meant for Blake and how no one would own up to what actually happened, so he had to provide his proof.
That he got from a show.
And by the way, I know I'm interrupting a lot. Go watch the full clip on his channel if you want. But this is important. This is important. Most people originally didn't like what Blake did. And I hate to say it, comment if you agree or disagree. Most people think it was the only choice he could have made, looking back and knowing that once that cat's out of the bag, once people believe where they're going to believe, that's what they're going to remember you as. So when the iron was still hot, he struck the nuclear code, I'm using a lot of different analogies, and he gave it out. And he said, here are the texts.
A fuckboy edit that I would argue that he very much earned.
Man had a lot of sex.
He had a lot of sex. I've seen the man in action.
He put the fucking fuckboy.
And which is fine. But he was gifted the Ben Higgins edit. And
I understand the term F-boy, but at the same time, if adults are consensually having sex, they're meeting at bars, they're going home on one-night stands, that takes two to tango. A true F-boy would be someone that leads somebody on, that promises them the world and then ghosts them. Is it an F-boy if Blake is going to Coachella and Kaylin is saying, I'm coming over, and he's saying, no, you're not, and then she says, watch me? Is he really an F-boy there?
And then he took that gift and had a ton of fun with a ton of different people. And he left a trail of collateral damage, and that came to a head on the beaches of paradise. And instead of looking at how his behavior and his choices might have played a role in that fuckboy edit, he decided to take someone down with him, even though he was advised by friends of his not to post it.
And then I just showed friends that said, look, maybe I wouldn't have done that. No one knows what they would have done, because it's easy for a friend to say, oh, don't do that. But when it's your DMs, when it's your livelihood, when it's people that are leaving comments on your mom's Instagram and all these other things that happen, all you have is your truth. All you have is what you can say that is actually hard evidence, which is what he did. So it's almost like Nick has sort of, again, reverse Uno'd, to use Katie's term here, the actual beef that existed, and it spilled over to his beef with Blake. And I don't see Nick being in good faith in the way he's arguing this, because he's misremembering or misinterpreting how serious these accusations were against Blake. Okay? I don't know if Blake survives being an influencer and doing all these things, and you might say, well, no one has the right or entitlement for that. Yeah, but I mean, we got to be a little bit fair here. And it was a very pivotal moment where he just wanted people to know the truth, and he gave Kaylin an out. He gave her the chance to share her side. So Nick says here, and we go back to the thumbnail, he left a trail of collateral damage. Well, how much collateral damage are we going to allow the producers to leave? How much collateral are we just going to set precedents where they can just make make these sort of soft Me Too angles where the guy's actually considered predatory? Because that's the path that they were leading on.
And was warned how it might affect the people involved. Instead of taking their advice, no, he reached out to the person he would affect, demanded that they put out a public statement, or else I will share the truth.
Handle the truth.
And when that person didn't do what he asked or demanded, he posted it all over his social. So yeah, I guess I see a bit of a difference between those two situations, which not everyone will agree with. But and that's okay. We still appreciate you listening.
And I actually don't think it's that not everyone will agree. I think the majority of people, because trust me, I don't push people to leave comments on other people's pages. The clickbait podcast, when they defended Nick and also at the same time discounted Clayton's mental health, they really did this sort of they just wildfired the whole thing. They dismissed Clayton's mental health. And again, 3 people that hadn't been leads on the show and know what that public scrutiny is. 3 people you could argue that all had very good edits on their respective seasons. They were kind of like fans, right? And then at the same time, they take Nick's side here. And I don't know. A lot of people, like I say, North Korean television here, see that the show's podcast and podcasts like Nick aren't telling a story that the public is seeing. So it feels like there's a lot of people, a lot of audience that have actually seen this all play out that go, this is rubbish.
That's rubbish, Dave.
And I also think it's funny for him to say this man has talked shit about me for 4 years when I'm like, we only bring you into the conversation when you bring yourself into the conversation.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's listen, like we started this segment, like this Bachelor Tea segment, not my favorite to talk about.
No, not mine either.
I believe this segment kind of exists because of channels like mine that break down these things. They're hot topics. They're hot topics to talk about.
But you all love it.
You all being listeners.
The listener. And so who are we to say no to what we're trying to provide an entertaining show for you guys. And we do it with some ground rules. And those ground rules are...
The ground rules are that we're going to leave a trail of collateral damage because we want to get a couple extra views.
If you ask for attention, we'll give it to you. We try not to spread...
Well, there you have it, folks. We got to the bottom of it. That's breaking news. Blake Horstmann was asking for it. Okay, he asked to be soft me too.
Hearsay or gossip.
If you post something, it's free game.
If you post it, if you talk about it. So if you're Blake Horstmann, not Blake Moynes.
By the way, shout out to Blake Moynes here. He was probably given every opportunity to slam Katie Thurston. I don't mean that I mean that metaphorically. Excuse me. But he's a good guy. Katie knows that. Even though they didn't work out, Blake Moynes is a good guy. He's raised by a great mom. He's got great siblings, great surrounding, good friends. And I haven't watched the episode, but I guarantee he didn't give Nick one iota of bandwidth to make Katie's sort of characterization any worse than he already has it.
Or if you're Blake Moynes, if you go on your social or other podcasts and you spread misinformation about the show, the people who make it, and more importantly, other people are on with you. So
misinformation of which goes in both directions. We've seen it just in this 5-minute clip.
So that you can promote some false narrative that you're more like the Blake from Becca's season than the Blake from Paradise, then we'll probably have something to say about it.
I personally don't think Blake Horstmann would give 2 rats ass if he came off like an F-boy. It's not the thing that went too far. The thing that went too far was that lies were being spread through an edit to make him I'm just being redundant at this point. So say, oh, we'd rather see the hero than the villain. No, it's not hero versus villain. It's normal human who has flaws versus a predatory edit.
And that, like, if you want to be a fuckboy, but don't bring other people down and don't spread misinformation about other people just because you don't want to, like, handle it. And you don't want the criticism. And for anyone who wants to, like, bring up the debacle of AFR with Andy, I've been criticized for it.
And this, of course, was when he asked Andy, like, how come you slept with me if I wasn't the final one? And then she says it was a boner killer. I've actually had a very hard time finding this video clip. I don't know if there's a reason why it no longer exists online. I wasn't able to find it. She wrote a tell-all book afterwards, and then he said in 2016, I don't know Andy to be the most honest person. What Andy does is she has a tendency of omitting information. That being said, the things that are written about me, a large part of it did happen. So I can't say that it's a fictional book. It might be missing some information, but a lot of the things she wrote about did happen. So Nick's had his own feuds with Andy here. And of course, she called it the most cringeworthy lady boner killing awkward night of her life. That's, of course, it did not go over well. Nick's apologized, and look, good for him. Good for him for admitting where he went wrong. Of course, ego can get the best of us, and especially when we're feeling hurt in that moment. Okay.
I've taken the criticism. I've acknowledged that I've, on several occasions, wish I didn't say it. I've apologized privately and publicly to the person I affected. And my regret is around the fact that how it affected other people. Unlike Blake, who to this day will still say that he would still post this thing, regardless of how it impacted someone else's life.
Well, because no one was going to, if he didn't post that, if he took one for the team, then what? Then there's misinformation out there that he doesn't correct. Now, I think it's important for people to stick to their truth, even if there's collateral damage attached to it. Because that collateral damage shouldn't exist if you are speaking your truth. The collateral damage only exists because Kaylin sort of piggybacked onto the lie of the edit. Okay? So I think, and I get one more clip from 2130. He kind of jumps forward a little bit right here and slams Blake one last time.
And I can laugh at Clayton and I can laugh at myself, but also my fear is, does this open the floodgates back up of all of the hate and stuff? But Clayton definitely was going with the flow. He was able to laugh.
Yeah, I mean, like we said it last week, I thought it was bullshit that the show did that. I thought it was unnecessary.
Hey, so there you go. Katie, hold on, we got Katie and Nick agree on something. Very nice.
And mean to their former lead. And I just got to say, it comes to Clayton and Susie, specifically Clayton, piggybacking off what we just mentioned about Blake. Like, that's why Clayton has all my respect and why Blake has none of it. Because
wow.
Clayton, he made mistakes. And no one was harder on Clayton than I was on this show. And Clayton fucked up, and he made some choices that affected other people, and he recognized it, he reflected on it, he owned it, and he could have blamed other people. He had a lot of reasons to, criticize the show. And it's not like it's not like even Blake didn't have reasons to be frustrated at the show. We've all been there. I assume that you have.
Poor Blake Moynes. Just leave him in the green room for this segment. The poor guy does not need to be a part of it. By the way, look at his arms. Holy shit! This guy's been doing triceps. Oh, Blake Moynes looking good. Why are you even wearing a shirt, Blake? Take the shirt off and show us what you're working with here. If this means being Canadian, then I'm headed north. I'm driving up right now. Golly, Blake. Whew. Boy, doesn't skip leg day either. Looking good. Okay. Anyway, all right. So he takes the moment to diss Blake one more time. Blake and Clayton were different scenarios. Clayton obviously slept with people and then dismissed them in group settings and did all the things where he was worried about his journey and not the females. I'm sorry, the ladies on his season. Oh my gosh, cancel me now. I'm trying my best, guys. So very different from what Blake just wanted the truth to be out there. Clayton wasn't trying to find the truth. The truth with Clayton's scenarios, which he messed up. He messed up and he apologized for that. Where did Blake mess up? Where did Blake mess up in the scenario in which he was saying, I have willpower not to have sex? And she says, yes, sex, only sex. Can someone provide me the receipts if we want to release receipts of where Blake messed up? And furthermore, it just appears like this narrative has shifted back to a Blake and Nick debate when in fact it's gotten, I think conveniently Nick has left Katie out of the debate. Maybe it's because Blake Moynes was there in the conversation, but best comments we can read are the ones on his channel because this takes my bias out of it and we just see what other people have said from Nick's comment section. Again, these are public comment sections. I respectfully disagree with Nick's take on Blake Horstmann. Although he did make some mistakes before coming on the beach, he got down there and faced borderline Me Too accusations from someone he thought he was friends with. Statements that ended up being false and defamatory. Kaylin pushed a story that she was sexually manipulated at Stagecoach, and that was ultimately not not true. Those texts prove that she was the aggressor that night and was begging him for sex. Although that is none of our business, I think that manipulating the story on the beach due to lack of attention from Blake was not only manipulative but very harmful. False accusations like that can ruin someone. Blake's back was pushed against a wall, and if he hadn't released those texts, Bachelor Nation would still think he coerced Kaylin into sex that night. Kaylin owes him an apology, one he will never forget. He will never get. It wasn't just a F-boy edit. It wasn't coercion either. It was tell the truth or I'm going to. He gave her the opportunity to come forward and she would have blamed everything on production and could have framed it as women's sexual empowerment. He gave her an out. I was about to write something similar, but you did a much better job. I agree with you 100%. I watched the Viall files and I respect Nick overall. However, I do not respect Nick for conveniently leaving Kaylin's Me Too allegations against Blake Horstmann completely out of his explanation. Not cool, Nick. Not cool. So these are big moments here. Now, I'll reflect what they said. I genuinely think Nick does a pretty good job on his podcast of providing a sort of cynical look at the way things go down. And I mean that with respect, that he's able to buy his home and travel the world and do what he does based on the way he sees the show. That's a good commentator. He does a good job there. This beef is very personal between them, and I think he's misremembering how things actually went down. Now, people will accuse me in the comment section of being Katie's friend, so I have an axe to burn here, or an axe to grind, or whatever the hell it is. And that's something I can't argue against. Of course I have a bias, because I think she tries her best, and I also think she did nothing to indicate why she blocked Nick, so his evidence against her is moot. Case closed. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to go live on Patreon literally right after I watch this, or you watch this, patreon.com/Dave Neal, and we are going to continue talking about this ever-going conversation. Don't expect to hear, by the way, let's turn this off right now. Don't expect to hear back from Blake Horstmann on this. He makes his money being a DJ. He has transitioned a career outside of Bachelor Nation. He's on a TV show, Paramount Plus, which is streamed in Brazil, Mexico, the UK, the US, and in other countries. So he's going to be doing just fine. He's not making his bones and his money meddling in the tea. So I don't expect him to comment here. If he does, we'll be all ears and you'll hear from me. All right, folks, we'll talk to you guys in a little bit. That's your update. Bye, everybody.